Welcome to the Dreamboat. Remember, you can join the DRI for just £10 a year until the end of June 2023. And you get access to more content, including videos and discounts for our events. It's a great way of finding out more about our work, joining our dream community, and supporting this podcast. Details are in the show notes. Welcome to the Dreamboat podcast, a place where we talk about everything dreamy. All you wanted to know about dreams and where you might find some answers. My name is Dave Billington, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm also director of the Dream Research Institute. And I'm joined by fellow psychotherapist Laura Payne.
Hello, I'm Laura Payne, and I'm also part of the Dream Research Institute. And we're called the Dreamboat because we are actually recording our podcast on a beautiful canal barge here at Little Venice in London called the Boat Pod.
We'll be looking at dreams, talking to guest experts, and answering your questions.
Now, let's get on with the episode.
We've heard from many of you saying how much you were enjoying our Dream of the Week section, each episode when we interpret a dream that's been sent in. So we've decided to have a whole podcast, each series dedicated to this kind of interpretation work. And that means that we'll have more time to unpick what's happening, and you can hear how we like to approach various aspects of the dreams. So welcome to what we are going to call the Dream Lab.
Yeah, the Dream Lab. Yes, we love this kind of work. And so the Dream Lab gives us more time to reflect on symbols, meanings, using some of the methods we've discussed so far, whether it's through the Jungian or Freudian lens or using some of the more esoteric but fascinating alchemical material, for instance. It means we can show you how we work in more detail and show you skills for interpreting your dreams. And we're really lucky that 2 listeners have sent in their dreams and have agreed to come on board the Dreamboat and join us so we can discuss the dream with them. And of course, it means you can listen into the process as well while we work with them.
So first off, we are pleased to welcome on board the Dreamboat Star from Oxford in England. Welcome aboard.
Hey, it's good to be here.
It's nice to
Thank
see you,
you.
Star. I think what we're going to suggest is why don't you just talk through the dream, which feels we've both looked at it and it's a very powerful dream, and just give us a little bit of context, and then Dave and I will work with you and sort of unpick the dream. Yeah, we'll unpick the dream.
Let me go and find, because I have with me, you'll be able to see this, but I have my first dream diary, which it's written in, but it was not written in very legible handwriting, which is one of the things that I think I need to work on when it comes to dreams.
Always helpful.
Yeah, let me go and find the summary I sent as well, and I will go and read from there.
Great.
Yeah. So this is a dream from, I think, about 6 weeks ago now. Mm-hmm. And it's got it's a bit fragmented. So the first thing I remember is feeling like I'd forgotten something important, like a key phrase or like a password to log into somewhere. Yeah. There was something that I'd set recently, and I'd done the thing, of like, oh, I'll remember this because it's something memorable, and it had completely gone out of my head. Mm-hmm. I remember being in some kind of city landscape, but almost like with the light turned down on it, like something about it had been dimmed. And there are people who I care about, or rather that care about me, who are in that landscape, dotted about. And I remember sitting in like a coffee shop and being brought cold coffee. So that's the first part of the dream that I remember.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You just take us through the whole thing.
Yeah. So to continue, then the dream shifts. I become aware that I have a child, and the child is a rat. The rat urinates everywhere, skitters about, and I have this sense that I need to keep this child a secret. I need to keep it hidden from my parents specifically. Mm-hmm. And I still don't know what this is, just the sense that something will happen if I don't do something. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Then there's a sense that my rat child has some amount of anger, and what I need to do is to let her actually bite me. And I really don't want to. But ultimately, I kind of close my eyes and wince and kind of prepare to be bit on the foot.
Yeah.
And at that point, the rat transforms, becomes like a small human child, probably about 5 or 6 years old, I'd say. And she can speak. And she's still got kind of grayish skin like a rat. By traditional beauty standards, she wouldn't be allowed to be called beautiful. But I feel very powerfully that I will murder and drink the blood of anybody that calls her ugly. She's beautiful, and she is my beautiful rat daughter, and her name is Artemisia. And I know this because she tells me this, because she's able to speak.
Okay.
And yeah, there's certain aspects of it that are still kind of rat inflected, like her teeth and various other parts. So then the dream shifts again.
Yeah.
Her father is my father, but not my father. He has
He's in
this
dreams
kind
sometimes.
of, I guess, for want of a better phrase, like this kind of very like entitled kind of white male anger about him. Just like this kind of stuck anger of being like, I was promised more by the world and it hasn't delivered. And somebody's fucked up somewhere, but it's not me. But there's this kind of impotence about it. Like, it's like an ingrown toenail. His wife doesn't really pay attention to him beyond like there's interactions, they're transactional, but there's no real being paid attention to. And there's this sense of inferiority that he has. And there's something around being more low status than the family that his wife comes from. I become aware that I'm afraid of his potential for violence and the unpredictable nature of that violence. Like, the lashing out might happen in 3 weeks' time, or it might happen today, but I don't know. When I'm able to kind of mantle this fear, and I use this like it's something around, I call it mantling because it's kind of like wearing it, but not being the same thing as it. There's something where I'm able to connect with him and kind of connect a bit more deeply with the sense of shame that he's holding, and this sense of being denied something. And the thing that I think that he's being denied is this, what I would call the birthright of everybody, which is the connection or the communion with the world, oneself, and other people. I'm able to listen to him, and I realize I'm doing this thing of like, I'm listening to him. I don't agree with his views or his politics or things, but I'm listening. I'm not making clear the full extent of my disagreement, but I'm gently kind of dropping in, stuff like, is that really how things are? Or, yeah, I get it, but also, have you considered ... And there's something of like a slow drip of a process. And then something shifts where he's like, oh, I've been doing this. And he changes, and the house, we're in a house kind of setting, changes too. There's something neater in a kind of more natural way about him. And also the environment is like less disordered now too. He has a different energy, and the home has a different energy. And I know that now it's safe for Artemisia to be there with the mother and the father.
It feels a very important part of the dream. We'll come back and have a chat about that when we still work with you with it.
So I'm now the wife and the mother, and I'm also not the wife and the mother. I have this duality of like, I'm them, but it's also I'm not them. I kind of watch almost at a distance. I can see the family moving into a different home. And what's happened is they've got financial help that they needed from the father's family, but there's something about the father not having wanted to ask for help from his own family because of this sense of shame about it. And also, I think because the mother's family are historically rich, and they have that social cachet, but perhaps not the immediate financial access, that it's like, I shouldn't be the one doing this, but because something shifted, something has moved, and now I know that Artemisia is going to have somewhere safe to live. So I become aware that I am all of them. I am the family unit, and I'm not the family unit either. I kind of my perspective shifts back, and I feel like I am what I call the relational force.
Do you mean by that you're all people in the dream? You're the interconnecting force between all people in the dream?
Between everything. I think that, as I understand it, the closest to that might be the idea of the anima mundi. But I don't know if it's exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some sense. It's what I call the relational force. It's the force that connects us and everything.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I am that. Artemisia is my child, and the family is also my child. And then I wake up. I wake up crying. I am brutally crying. I'm like hawking my guts out crying for like 10 to 15 minutes as I write it down.
Wow.
I kind of cried like this at the end of The Shape of Water. It's this, I think there's a similar sense of this real intimacy about being close to people, the sense of communion, about being touched by something quite profound. And I'm very, very emotionally devastated. And also I have this lingering sense of deep love for Artemisia, who embodies something that's just very, very wise, very good, very pure, although that word has certain connotations. Like there's just something very simple and clean and eager and important about her. So that's the dream.
And can you just give us a little bit of context of where you are in life, what's going on, so we can just sort of place it a bit?
Yeah, sure. How long you got?
Well, actually, just to frame that a little bit, what I'm wondering is, do you see parallels between the dream and your life right now, or your life around the time of the dream? Because that's often pretty revelatory.
Yeah. So this was at a time, if I think about myself 6 weeks ago, the closest thing that kind of comes to me is I was engaged in a project that it didn't really have this goal in mind, but it happened, where I've been picking up a card game that I always wanted to play as a kid called Yu-Gi-Oh! And I learned to play it competitively. I met a new group of people. I went and I was getting ready to play in this big competition. And I had some very profound experiences while playing, where I kind of was able to access a space of like, I'm historically like somebody that would have described myself as like a high achiever, or like, an ex-gifted kid, or that kind of archetype, right? Where I always want to be the best because that's what's safe for me. That's academic attainment is what keeps me safe in my family unit. So that's my comfort zone. And so during this competition, where I'm being competitive and wanting to win, I'm also been able to access, I would say, my intuitive function, where I sometimes would get the sense that don't play this card this way. And so my rational side, I think, would be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's clearly not optimal. But I was able to go, you know what? I'm going to listen to that, even if it means that I might not win, or I might not meet the metrics of success that I'm looking for. And I feel that there's something about this dream that is a retrieval of some aspect or part of me that I have been closed off from, because it's not been safe to be just going on a hunch. I'm using heavy scare quotes here. For things, or to do stuff without being able to rationalize why.
Well, it's interesting that you say at the beginning that you'd forgotten some sort of login or passphrase. So it's like the key to something that well, maybe you are, or we're rediscovering it around that time.
Being locked out I was thinking around that. And is there anything else in your sort of wider life that you can associate with some of the symbolisms and the transformations that are very apparent in this dream?
Yeah. There's a kind of a lot in there, right? It depends on kind of what I focus on. I think a reconnection with spirituality is definitely a part of feeling like I had this communion with the relational force is really important,
Yeah.
because I've been doing some processing through realizing my anger at kind of organized religion, I think, especially kind of what I came to learn growing up. And I was able to kind of manifest some of my anger at what I experienced as like the non-existence of the God I was taught would be there to witness what happened to me. And I experienced that God not being there.
Yeah.
And so actually being able to go, yeah, I had that experience, and I haven't been able to connect to this. There's something about almost like being given a gift in this dream. And I associate, there's something about Artemisia and about certain functions in myself that I associate with, like, there's just something so benevolent about them. And it feels very much like it's I don't know, there's something reciprocal about it. Like you did this for me and I want to do this for you, not because I have to, but to express something important between us.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I was thinking that Dave and I we've obviously got very different interpretive resources here. And we thought perhaps we'd look at the dream through different sort of dream theories as such.
yeah.
I came away when I first read the dream and I thought it reminded me of Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials, with having like a daemon. And I know that, you live in Oxford, which is where His Dark Materials is set. And it was like, the rat was almost like your own personal daemon that was an extension of you. And it had a real magical quality about it. I don't know how you feel about that sort of bit of exposition.
Yes, and I connected very much with, I think, those books when I was younger as well. I think the scene where the children are separated forcibly from their daemons is something that really stuck with me after I read it. As like, it's one of the times actually I first felt anger, is reading that and being like, that's an injustice, and I'm so furious about this abuse that's being done. Actually.
Wow.
Yeah. I share that with you as well. I think it was such a powerful moment. And again, there is a religious context, because although Pullman is a sort of an atheist and anti-religion as such, this is a notion, the daemon is almost like the child's soul.
Absolutely.
So this killing off of the soul, there's like something of you being killed off, but not in this dream.
Yeah, and in fact, it's the opposite. There's a connection being made here, and a very physical connection. I loved how you described that there's this kind of fear, or that this has to happen, that you have to be bitten, and you kind of I can't remember how you put it, but close your eyes and wince.
Yeah.
And it's not just any bite, but it's a bite on the toe.
Yes.
And that part of the body, the part that connects to the ground, and quite often we see this in dreams, the symbolism of where a bite or a wound or something occurs, and it's like it brings the attention very sharply to that part of the body. And so I was wondering about that for you, about what what's your relationship to being grounded in the metaphorical sense.
And also feet. Have you got a particular association with feet or toes?
Yeah, I would say that I have not been grounded for a lot of my life, and it's definitely something that I've built slowly over time. There's something around the ground, or being connected to the ground, that's about being in the world for me. And being in the world has been a very tricky prospect, because it's like how I don't feel like I had a kind of archetypal father quality modeled for me in terms of mediating, the kind of ego mediating with the inside and the outside. That wasn't, it was always like just completely non-functional. And so I didn't think there was ever any position I could occupy that would be safe.
Well, there's a lot of safety aspects in this dream, isn't there, for the rat and the rat's parent, i.e. parents, i.e. you, to feel safe. There's this moving of home, which is, from a symbolism point of view, deeply important. I was thinking with the biting of the foot, it reminded me again of, we've talked about it before, Arnie Mindell's The Dreaming Body aspect. And it's transformative. Once you are bitten, then the rat is allowed to become a child and be assimilated in some way. And that feels really an important part of this transformative process of the journey that you actually go on in this dream. Are there any associations you have with rats? I was thinking just from an association point of view. I mean, it's, it's one of those archetypal figures, isn't it, that carries disease and, people associate it with the Black Death. It's not...
but people have them as pets as well.
But people do have them as pets, exactly.
I love rats. And I feel very fiercely, like my love is very fierce for them, kind of similar to Artemisia in that, like, it makes me mad that people don't like rats or like that kind of characterize them or mischaracterize them. Yeah, they're stinky, pissy little babies that will bite you all the time. There's no getting away from that, but they're very loving and they're just, I love all kinds of animals. Also, if you don't know, rats is star backwards. So
right.
It's something that I often joke with my friends around.
That's really interesting. So you're already embodied in some way into the word.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Oh, I hadn't spotted that.
What about Artemisia? Why Artemisia? What does that mean to you?
It's so interesting. I actually looked it up afterwards.
Sure, yeah.
Because I know that there's a bitter herb that's named after Artemisia, and I think that the herb gets its namesake from an old ruler. I think I can't remember quite where. Might have been one of the Cretan islands, who was famous for her grief over her brother husband, because oligarchies, and they married siblings back in those days. And I think she would eat some of his ashes, or mix them into her drink every day. And so then her name became associated with a plant. And there's also like a route through Artemis, and there's...
I was thinking about Diana and Artemis being the Greek hunter as such.
Yeah.
But a very strong feminine killer sort of hunter image.
Yeah, there's something about feminine power in it, I think, along both lines. And something about grief and eating, slowly drinking the ashes of your departed lover as well. There's something very physical about that kind of grief too.
If we sort of do a quick Jungian, there are a lot of symbols in here. So obviously the rat, money, and I thought that was quite interesting. Money as power and disempower in the dream. And obviously the home, which is always, not always, but is a regular symbol as the safe container for self, as in the big S, self.
Yeah. Personality, persona, character, self. Yeah.
And I'm also intrigued by the opposites. So here we have, as Jung would say, if we did a Jungian reading, we have some very powerful archetypes. We have the archetypes of the parents, the father being slightly distorted, the mother being distorted, and then the archetype of the child being a rat, whether you wonder how there's any distortion around that. But in the end, the rat holds the innocence and the goodness and the purity, as you say. And so it feels very much like the rat is almost like an anima guide in this, in some way. And I just wondered whether you had any associations, what you felt about the money in the home symbolism in this.
For me, I think there's a lot about the nuclear family and how my uncomfortable feelings about it. To me, it's one of those symbols that is something that it's not right. It doesn't sit right with me. There's something about it that is, I feel in need of some kind of transformation or restoration. It feels kind of out of joint or out of place. So I think that's where I go to, is that feeling of something needs to come in and shift this. There's a separation, or it's a place that I often associate with a kind of atomization, right? We're being pulled apart from one another, parents being isolated from one another and their child, and also from a wider community too. So So
I
those
was
are the
quite
associations
intrigued.
I would have.
Yeah, and also this notion of the masculine energy being disempowered in the father figure, that it's not able to find full vitality, and the alchemical operation of calcinatio. We have a lot of rage here, sort of pent up rage as well. But the father transforms this rage when he meets what I'm going to call the crone, the father's mother. And I just wondered whether your grandmother had a big impact on your life and what you might associate with the father's mother, your grandmother. Was she a family crone, as in a good witch? I mean, by crone, a transformative, wise woman.
I wouldn't say that she occupies that role in the sense of I think at this point and at the time that we're speaking and recording, she's currently nearing the very end of her life. Is someone who is I associate with learning how to live and be for the very first time now, even in her late 90s. You know, there's something very childlike about her when in my interactions with her, and I know that that's not the side of her that everybody gets to see, but often she's asking me, that's my mother's mother.
Okay.
In the dream, it's your father's mother, isn't it?
Yeah. My father's mother has passed. Babane. There's something about her that I always found very impressive. There was something that kind of, she had the quality of like, how do I say this? Like the first thing that comes to me is like at the end of Candide, where, you know, it's about like going and sitting down and like cultivating rutabagas or whatever. I felt like she'd kind of gone through it and had ended up at, I'm cultivating rutabagas now. There was something
gardening, the gardener.
She made jam. You know, she cooked a lot, obviously. But also she was very loving. And also somebody I myself had been kind of isolated from at various points in my life during my upbringing, but I felt a great deal of affection for her. And I was very sad at her passing.
Yeah, exactly. And she, in the dream, she appears very much as a transformative character because she transforms the anger of the father by enabling through finance, which obviously money often represents power. He regains a power via this sort of crone figure to be able to buy a new house where suddenly the rat and everybody can transform and live successfully and happily. So she feels like quite an integral part of the transformative process.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm not, which isn't to say that that's wrong, because absolutely it's about his contact with her that's been important in the shifting of the family fortunes. But when I feel strongly that whoever I was when I was talking to him also had a very big impact on being able to help him place his anger in the right place. I think that's what I was doing as the figure in the dream talking to him. And maybe I was being his mother at that time. I don't know quite who I was.
Arguably, we're all people in the dream. So all of these figures are parts of are parts of ourselves.
And that does seem to be the really important part of the dream in terms of kind of emotional impact, I guess, to put it that way. That at first there's this father figure who, you know, is this incredibly distorted masculine. He's, you know, entitled white man, you know, and there's all this anger and rage wrapped up in this figure.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a job either. I think that's another thing. He feels displaced because he knows that his role is supposed to be like as a breadwinner, right? And the fact that that's not happening is really bad for him.
Yeah, in alchemical terms, that's known as death of the ruling masculine principle, work being seen as the masculine principle for the alchemist as part of transformation. And so in this case, we've got the masculine being expressed through work, being subverted in some way, the masculine energy. And so, so there's a disempowerment of this father figure. As you say, he's not even working, so he's sort of, I think you called it a house husband at one stage. It doesn't feel like it's got a lot of status around it.
Yeah. yeah, that's how he feels about it for sure. Like, and I felt like that that emotional inflection in the dream, like this, yeah. And the house is in disarray, and I think that's a representation of his disgust with it, right? It's like, I don't want to be doing this. This is beneath. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. This is beneath me, and all of that, right?
Yeah.
One question I'd like to ask Dave: if you were doing a waking dream technique on this, Dave, what would you work with?
Well, I would definitely be going back into the beginning of the dream to start with, and there's a couple of things that would be really interesting just to connect with, to see where they take you in yourself. So it begins in this cityscape, and often we associate the cityscape with the mind, with the mental construct. And you said it was a cityscape, but it wasn't. Did you say there wasn't sunlight, or it was sort of a bit dim or dark or something like that?
Yeah, there's something around. Yeah, it wasn't bright, but it wasn't. It was actually quite nice. It was like slow, and there was something calm, and yeah, it was like it's still the day, but also there's those kind of shades of it being like the sun has set, and it's that kind of blue after the sun has set kind of feeling in it.
Yeah.
And then you're given cold coffee.
Yes.
What you didn't say was, did you want cold coffee? Were you hoping for hot coffee and you got cold coffee, or was this what was actually asked for?
I didn't expect cold coffee. There was something about like, I've been served cold coffee. What's happening? What's happening with this?
Yeah, and so maybe that's the question, which is, what is happening with that? What does that do to you? What's the response that you have to being given that?
There's one thread that is like my history with complaining about food in restaurants. Like, I used to be somebody that couldn't set any boundaries at all. And it was such a huge deal for me, I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago, maybe more. The first time I ever complained about food I'd been given, I think it was in the Lake District, and I'd just been served the most disgustingly abhorrent lasagna I'd ever been served. It was unequivocally not fit for human consumption. And with a lot of support from my partner and my friend at the time, I was able to somewhat timidly go, this lasagna isn't very good. Can I have my money back, please? And they gave me my money back.
Okay.
So again, this is about power, isn't it? And taking power and finding your voice, which, is an important part of this dream.
Yeah, there was something about, I'd been given this cold coffee and I felt like, I don't know if I felt that way, but this is how I feel now, of like, I could complain about it, but I'm all right drinking cold coffee, and I'm not complaining because I can't. It's because I'm choosing not to.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing I'd then be interested in after that is, especially in this waking dream process, where it's about connecting image and feeling, that you meet Artemisia, the rat, the beautiful rat daughter, and noticing the feelings and the sensations that come up in you as you first encounter and you see her, and then particularly there's the bite on the foot. And the classic question is, what are you getting in touch with there? What is the experience of that bite on the foot? What do you become aware of? Which foot? What's it like? What's coming into you, your consciousness with this bite? What do you think that would be like? I know we're not doing the waking dream process now, but just as an imaginal sort of exercise.
The first thing that I remember not actually being able to feel the moment of the bite in the dream, which is interesting. Like, and it's possible I don't remember it. My sense is it's my left foot and it's my big toe.
Okay.
And what is it like? Ooh. There's something about being afraid because I don't want my rat child to be angry at me.
Okay.
And also I realize there's something about surrendering, because I realize that my rat child is angry at me, and I need to let them express it, in a sense of like, because of how I feel about them, because I care about my child and my child's growth, I don't want to deny them that. So even though I really don't want to get bitten, I'm going to get bitten.
It sounds like being in the position of the self-sacrificing mother, allowing yourself to be bitten by and be to feed the child in that way. It's quite powerful.
There is I think in my own experience, at least what I'm aware of right now, is I never felt like my anger was accepted. I think it was always defeated in some way by my mother. And so there wasn't like a pure transmission of being able to go, I don't like this. I don't like this being treated this way.
Yeah, I think if I was working with you with the waking dream technique, I would probably set up a dialogue in a sort of almost Gestalt way of asking you to talk to the father in the dream and talk to the mother in the dream. But in the end, working with the body, which is what the waking dream technique, as we know, brings us back to, the wonderful qualities of this daughter rat, wise and good and pure. I would ask you where you found those in your body and set that up as a meditation so that you consolidate something that you found in yourself during this particular dream, which seems to give voice to the anger in some way, but also transmute it. So from an alchemy point of view, this is a real sort of calcinatio in many ways, but also there's a coagulatio feel in that it's brought to earth and it's grounded by the biting of the rat on the foot. And so from an alchemy point of view, you've got two operations here, both calcinatio and some form of coagulatio, bringing it all together.
Importantly, I think what you just said, Laura, was the qualities that this rat daughter has, that wisdom, that purity, that innocence, those are your qualities.
Exactly.
And so where do you find them in yourself? Yep. Now that you can connect maybe through a kind of it's an uncomfortable connection in the bite, but how can you connect to that in yourself?
No, I feel very called out. I find it hard to connect to positive qualities like that in myself. There are some that I can, but
well, they're in there somewhere, Star. We're going to have to wrap up now, but I think I'd ask you to sit in meditation with those qualities and just for yourself work out where they are in your body and just sit with them every day. Meet them every day and know that wisdom, goodness, and purity do sit within.
Yeah. May I share one last thing?
Please.
Yeah.
There's something that I'm realizing that's important as well about like her being seen as not beautiful, as being seen as ugly by the world, or not being allowed to access being beautiful, even though I know that she is. I know that that's an important part of the whole package too. Yeah. There's something around that that's very emotive for me. And I think I'm very surprised still that I feel that very violent anger that come up when I think of people, misrepresenting or mistreating it. It's one of the reasons I almost felt quite vulnerable coming into this podcast too, because I'm like, are they gonna respect my beautiful rat child?
She's lovely. We love her.
Yeah, we do. I hope you feel that. Yeah, she's very welcome.
Thank you for bringing her in, Star. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your wonderful dream.
Yeah, there's so much in that dream, Star. Yeah. We could have spent all day talking about it. Probably there's so much. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you. Right, so next up, we're joined on board the Dreamboat by June from the south coast of the UK. June, many thanks for joining us and braving this. And so over to you, really. So if you wouldn't mind just reading through your dream, and then Dave and I will do a bit of analysis, for want of a better description.
Thank you, Laura. It's lovely to be here. And here's my dream. I was in the sea in the daytime and it was warm and calm and it felt lovely. I was out of my depth and far from the shore, but the tide was out, so that was to be expected. The shore had houses on it, evenly spaced out in a line with pointed roofs, as you might expect a child to draw, too far away to see what they were like. I then fell asleep, and I think this was part of the dream, as when I woke in the dream, everything looked exactly the same as it had been before, the view to the shore, the state of the water. My first reaction was, how could I sleep in the sea? That's not a sensible thing to do. I then swam 360 degrees and was filled with sudden panic as I couldn't see the shore anymore. I had drifted out into open water. I called for help and waved, and then I saw a horse and a rider in the distance to my left. I had time to think, how can that be? You can't ride on water. But when I looked more closely, the rider, a girl or young woman, was galloping fast on a dark brown horse, and there was ground below the water, like when horses go along the beach in the shallows. I calmed down as I knew I could swim that far. It was easy to get there, and then I can climb out of the sea and walk too. In my dream, I don't know how I got to the shore. It was unclear, hazy scene, but it had a Mediterranean feel, open places to sit and eat with canopies, all very makeshift but welcoming. It didn't look totally real as the water had done. I was aware of people all round, but they were like shadows, very surreal. I continued and turned back to look at the calm sea, but it had turned rough and dark, and a huge wave taller than the people was forming. I now felt I was on an island in the Pacific by the shoreline, pale sand, and it was very hot. Nobody seemed alarmed, and I shouted to run, turned away and braced myself to be swept away. Nothing happened, and I looked down to find gentle water around my feet, like a small wave breaking on the sand. I carried on walking up the beach. I knew there were people about. I heard laughter and the background sounds that are so like a beach on a sunny day. I couldn't focus on any individual, but sensed fishermen going about their daily work. This made me feel comforted and ready to go on up the beach. And then I woke up.
That's lovely. Thank you. And what I just wonder, first of all, is do you remember how you felt when you woke up from this dream? What kind of lingering sense were you left with?
I had a happy lingering sense because it had all ended happily and safely. And the feeling I had was that I was now going to have and enjoy a nice day on the beach. Mm-hmm. But I had a slight uneasiness because there obviously was a point early in the dream when I'd felt real panic.
Yeah. And there seems to be this back and forth in the dream of there's sort of relaxation, falling asleep in the sea, and then there's a moment of panic, and then it's okay again. And then there's the wave, and it's a little bit of panic again, and then that's okay as well. So there seems to be that kind of back and forth, a really pleasant environment, but these
a bit like waves.
Yeah, waves of panic every now and then. Is that something that you would kind of relate to in waking life?
Yes, I think sometimes I do perhaps worry about things, and maybe I worry about things which are not necessary things perhaps you should worry about. I think, yes, sometimes my life does seem quite backwards and forwards. Mm-hmm. Maybe I sometimes react quite strongly to things in life. In the sense that obviously I was very worried about a very large wave coming, mm-hmm. but no one else was.
Yeah.
And it was almost like then I looked down and they were right, because obviously maybe it was a question of perspective. Mm-hmm. Maybe that wave was further out to sea, and therefore by the time it got to shore, it was going to be a small wave. And they'd all realised that, and I hadn't.
So if it's not too prying, is that a familiar position to be in, where you feel like you're the one in the position of worrying, or you're the one who has to worry and nobody else is doing the worrying?
Yeah, maybe I am a bit of a worrier in the family, mm-hmm. and I do have a project that's going on in my life where I've offered to do something for my wider family. It's to do with unraveling something that an elderly relative set up. And it's a project where it's all internally driven, any worry, because everyone in my family is very supportive and very grateful about what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But it's something where things go well and you think you're achieving something, mm-hmm. and then it doesn't work, and then you have to start again. Mm. And I would say, and sometimes hindsight is something that we have to be careful of. You are the experts, I am not, but I can imagine that you might think all your dreams are related. But I would say probably while this has been going on, I've had a lot more dreams like that, where it's all going well and it's all very nice, then something happens, but in the end. And also a lot of people in my dreams don't seem to be bothered by the things that I am.
Yeah.
How annoying that is sometimes.
Very annoying.
I was, I mean, if we're going to sort of look at some of the sort of classic interpretations, Dave and I have been trained to look at the elements. We're very interested in, you can't deny the water element in this dream. It's sort of,
No.
you know, at one stage I thought, yes, you feel all at sea, and how overwhelming that can be sometimes, just emotionally, because often we associate elementally with water, the emotional self. And as you said, you know, sometimes it can be scary and emotions wash over us and they feel almost unmanageable, as you discussed with that tsunami type of wave that you felt the danger and nobody else could. So there's a very strong, obviously, emotional self that's being voiced in this dream. And if we were looking at it from what we would call an alchemical point of view, the alchemy, which is the sort of transformation of self, it's something that Jung and a lot of psychoanalysts are very interested in. There are different operations all around the elements, with solutio being transformation by water. So here we have you all at sea. I know you live on the south coast in the UK, and I understand you do swim in the sea. But there's something about loss of control, isn't there, during this, and that the power of the sea is something that you're trying to negotiate, this sort of general power and loss of power and loss of control. I don't know how that sits with you.
Yes, I think so. I think I do love swimming, and I love swimming in the sea. And I'm careful, but I do usually feel confident when I'm doing that. It's something that I very much enjoy. And I think to feel panic, and it was a real panic, and I think if it had continued on that way in the dream, I would have equated it to like a nightmare type of dream, rather than a dream that in the end you wake up to and you feel actually it all came all right in the end. So I think yes, that's very true. I think I did think the horse riding and how to get out was I did find that quite bizarre. And the thing about the first part of the dream was everything looked very real.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you have people who describe that. You know, we have dreams, don't we, where the people in it, the things you see, they just look like they do in normal life.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other issue is that there are other times, like the end of the dream, where it was all very sort of, I used the word surreal. I didn't know what other word to use to describe it. I couldn't describe to you any detail of any of the people later in it.
Yeah.
People on a beach, and also it was almost like from different eras, like the fisherman thing. In my mind, it was like fishermen from way back.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, almost, or at least that's why I felt it was in sort of like the Pacific. The idea of you see fishermen in more olden times, and I definitely. I mean, I didn't actually write that down, but I reflect on that. It definitely didn't feel like I was somewhere where it was a tourist thing. I was genuinely looking at people from different backgrounds, different ages. It was that last part was quite strange. And sometimes in dreams, I do know that I'm in a dream.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And I know I listened to your podcast about the
lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming, yeah. And I definitely think I do that, because I know I'm in a dream, and I can actually, I either think, well, I'm not worried about that because this is a dream. But in the first half of this dream,
it feels lucid, doesn't
worried.
it? Yeah. That Dave and I were talking about that when you first sent it in, so we could read about it, and we both thought, wow, this is obviously this was a lucid moment, that you awake in the dream, which is a classic lucid activity. And everything looked the same as before. But then you realise, I love this moment, how can I sleep in the sea? And that's just such a typical lucid comment.
It is, but also you reminded me of this when you were talking about the water element, Laura, that at the beginning of the dream, if you take the water as being potentially metaphorical for the feeling part of ourselves, and what happens is that you're unconscious in your feelings in that case. You're unconscious in the sea, but then you wake up.
Yeah.
And there is this sense of awareness around it as well. And the difference between being in the sea and being unconscious, waking up, the panic, and then you find your way to the shore, and then being on land and seeing the sea, seeing the wave coming, and the feelings that are there again. It's sort of almost the same feeling, that sense of a little bit of rising panic, a little bit of anxiety, but in a different circumstance. In the one case, you're in the water, and then the next case, you're on the land.
I also find that and this often happens for me when I am in a lucid space in a dream. The imagery becomes very clear. There's a very sort of crystal clarity about it, and you described that really, really nicely. If June wanted to take lucid dreaming further, what would you recommend, Dave?
Well,
Apart from going on a course.
Oh, you took the words out of my mouth. No, if you're interested in lucid dreaming, then there are lots of techniques and practices that you can do to develop that sense of being aware in a dream. And one of the ways of doing it is to go back to a dream like this, where there's that we call it proto-lucidity, that edge of being almost aware. And before you go to bed at night, go back to it and look at what is it? What was the thing that made you think, oh, there's something a bit odd here? In this case, it was you can't sleep in the sea. And it's those elements. In dream research, they call it bizarreness. So when there's something that's bizarre that wouldn't be in waking life,
and you notice that it's bizarre, that's the kick to tell you that you're lucid dreaming at that point.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you go, oh, okay, actually this is a dream.
And then you've got, as for the lucid dreamer, those are the moments then you've got control. So you could then choose to do other things in the dream and direct the dream more how you would want it to be. So I really like this very sort of lucid moment that you talk about. And I wondered if you had previous sort of lucid moments in dreams, which, as you say, you do.
Yes, I don't know that I have, or I feel I have dreams where I can necessarily direct what I'm doing, but I have had quite a number of dreams, and I was just thinking about one I had the other day. I was riding on a train like you see small trains for children's in like little animal parks and things like that, right? Happily going along that. Then all of a sudden the weather changed, it became very icy, and then this train was then part of a roller coaster. And I was thinking, no, this isn't right. This isn't safe. This can't happen.
Yeah.
This will crash. This will be very serious. But I thought, no, this is a dream. I can stop this train at the top of the hill before it goes down. And sure enough, the train stopped. Now, I couldn't see anybody else on the train. I thought there were people on it, but I didn't see any other people in the dream at that point. And that's, I think... I don't know quite what that says about me, but that's the sort of extent sometimes of my lucid dreaming, in the fact that if there's something happening that perhaps shouldn't, and it often tends to be perhaps to me or to other people, or quite randomly things are happening, I think, well, no, that this doesn't need to happen because it's a dream, and so I can stop it, and then I can move on to a different part of my dream.
Yeah.
Or I'll wake up.
Yeah, that's the power.
I don't know whether that's
lucid dreaming. There it is.
Well, there we go. Well, I lucid dream then, and I nearly always remember. I wake up and I remember a dream or part of the dream that I've had, and I have to say, I've actually, since you asked me to talk to you, I've asked quite a lot of friends, and they go, oh yes, well, maybe occasionally once a week or randomly. And I think, goodness, because sometimes I wake up in the morning, I think, I'm really tired.
That's so true.
That
You've
was
got
a really
rich
exhausting
dream life. Yes.
Yeah.
And I never, but I assume that we all dream, but maybe we'll remember. Is it right that we remember them to different degrees and different?
Yeah. It does seem from sleep lab studies that people are dreaming more or less all the time, but not everybody remembers them.
Yeah. If we look at some of the other symbols in this dream, and we perhaps go and have a look what David, I would call it a Jungian interpretation. I'm interested in the horse. And the fact that the horse has a female rider, and the interplay between the masculine and the feminine in this dream. And the sea is often seen as a because of the flow, as a feminine energy as such, whereas the horse is often seen as a masculine energy. For Freudians, it would represent our sense of libido and power and energy. Was the horse? I know the rider was a woman, a young girl. Was the horse masculine or feminine? Can you remember if you tuned into it?
I don't know that I really did, but it was a small horse. I mean, maybe actually I thought it was a female horse.
Okay.
It certainly wasn't a large, powerful horse. It was quite a small one. That I would definitely say, yes. So I wouldn't say at the time I thought of it as male or female, but if I reflect and tried to remember exactly what it looked like, you would not have said. It could have been a male horse, but it wasn't like a very big, powerful horse that often the large male horses are.
So one of the other things I wonder about then with the horse and rider is, as a symbol, Laura, you'll be familiar with the work of Ken Wilber, and he has this idea of the centaur as a stage of development where mind and body are working together. And I think, I've ridden a little bit in my life, and that experience of being one with the horse, with the power and energy of that fantastic physical body, but also being able to direct it in some way. And when we have that unity in ourselves, that is so powerful.
Yes, and in this dream, it is the image of the girl on the horse. The horse rider is almost a guide for you to get back to the shore.
That's
you
right.
realise
Yes.
you're not far out, and that
Yes.
she holds an important aspect to the dream. She is, as is the horse, and I like the centaur image. That's an important part of you. It's where the mind and the body, the sense of self, are in balance. And as you were saying earlier on, sometimes the sense of worry and anxiety around varying things is when the mind is sort of not feeling balanced. And yet this horse rider offers a great energy within you to show you when it is balanced, the shore's not far away. You know how to get home.
Yes. She was very balanced, riding very well. And I used the word galloping because she was going quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, was the comforting thing. She was there, she was galloping, and therefore actually I wasn't so far out. Or if I was out, there was a place where it was shallow and safe and you could get there, and then I could just walk.
Yeah. And the galloping, I like the galloping and the fast pace because it offers something not only of movement within the dream, but there's a deep connective energy. It feels quite transformative.
Well, yeah, what it brings to mind for me, and I don't know if this would be relevant for you, June, but one of the ways that is really effective at calming our minds, calming our anxiety, and of course we would be working with this as therapists quite frequently, is using the body. So, you take a deep breath, or you slow down your breath, or, a body scan, mindfulness meditation, that you use the body to feel grounded. And when we do that, we find that the mind slows down and we don't have that sense of anxiety necessarily. So I just brought that to mind. And is that any part of your experience or something you would relate to, Jude?
Yes, I think so. I think, and I do think that's when swimming is one of the times when I think that is something that's very important to me.
Yeah.
Because you're swimming, you're at one with the water, you are doing physical exercise, but actually I do find it actually one of the most liberating times for the mind to swim, because you are sort of like taking deep breaths, you're working to a rhythm. Mm-hmm. It's actually very calming, although you're doing a physical exercise. Yeah. And I think that's why I'd say the first part of when I said I was swimming in the daytime, it was calm and lovely. I was maybe just like treading water, just enjoying being in the sea and the calmness of it. And that's why and I think when I said I fell asleep, maybe I thought, oh, that's it. I was actually too calm and too relaxed. And then I fell asleep in the sea. I should have been more, that's not really something that's sensible to do. But I think, yes, I can relate to that and see that.
Yeah, you described how you describe breathing and swimming is a perfect example of what we would call regulation. So regulating your feelings, swimming gives you a great sense of regulation, being in contact with your breath. One of the things I'm just going to ask Dave is, we hear it, we use this term quite a bit, but Dave and I work a lot with what's known as the waking dream technique. Dave, how would you work with June and the waking dream technique if she was working with you?
Well, I'd be really interested to know and to invite you into the experience of being in the sea. That's where it starts. That's the initial experience. And tune into, what does your body feel like being in that water? Is it warm water? Is it cold water? And what's it like to be in that environment? And from there, then to just notice how the feelings, so that, there's the emotions that are there, but how you actually sense those in your body as they change through each part of the dream, and what you connect to along the way, just to see, what's it like for some of that anxiety to come up, and, what does that feel like in the body? And then what is it that allows it to dissipate again? What does it feel like to be on the dry land? How does that make you stand? How do you feel in your body when you're there?
Work with the opposites. That's lovely. I like that a lot.
What about you, Laura?
I'm really intrigued by the horse. If I was working with you, I'd sort of perhaps say, let's get on the horse and ride it, see what that feels like, what being in control of the shallows and the waves and what that would be like. But also at the end, you talk about you see the fisherman, and I'm intrigued that this is the sort of the masculine in the dream, these fishermen, and they feel very ancient to you. So you're connecting with something, an archetype of something that feels very powerful, and that makes you feel comforted. And I would ask you where you kept that sense of comfort in your body, and ask you to stay with that, for a week or whatever, just finding that comfort that is calm and de-stressing in the body. And I think that's how I would sort of wrap up the work with it.
It seems like that's maybe the gift that the dream brings to you. Yes, in life, of course, there's moments of anxiety, and comes and goes. We're all at sea. We all know what that's like.
Or as June says here, when we're out of our depth.
We're out of our depth. God, we all know what that's like, right? Yeah. But then the dream does bring you something that is a sense of comfort at the end of it, and it's in this particular environment. It's this Mediterranean place. There's these men. It's an ancient practice, the fishermen, and there's something comforting in that. So how do you connect to that in yourself?
Yeah, I think there were both men and women on the beach, and as I say, the first part of it was perhaps a more modern feel to it. So it was just people enjoying themselves. And I think probably when I think about it, I've always maybe admired, I say fishermen because it felt like an ancient, older thing, but I've always actually admired people who make their living from the sea, because it is a hard thing to do. It is a dangerous thing to do. But actually, if you do it properly, perhaps as people did do it years ago, in tune with nature, in tune with realizing the sea as a powerful but a very beautiful thing, a very giving thing too. The sea can give back an awful lot, can't it? If we use it properly, it can be a wonderful thing to feed us, to nurture us, to look after us. And maybe that, from the things that you've now just said, has made me think about that is probably a comforting thing of like doing things properly and appreciating the simple things that we have.
And being
perhaps
in
that's
rhythm.
actually what ancient fishermen did, didn't they? They appreciated the sea and the water, what it gave them, their livelihoods.
And in rhythm with that flow. There's a rhythm of accepting things will be as they are.
Yes, I need to probably do more of that.
Don't we all?
That's a good place for us to wrap up.
Yeah,
June,
that's
thank
really
you
lovely.
so much. It was a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
Really,
Thank you.
really lovely. And thank you for coming on board the dreamboat and sharing it with us.
Yeah. It's nice to visit that place with you. So thanks very much for sharing it. I really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming on.
I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's the end of our Dreamboat Dream Lab session, which is something we're going to feature in each series. Hope that you enjoyed listening to those 2 dreams and us unpick them in more depth.
Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have today. And keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.
So, thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show note for links, or find us on Instagram as the Dreamboat Podcast, on our Facebook page as Dreamboat Podcast, on Twitter as @DreamboatPod, or come and find us at driccpe.org.uk. That's driccpe.org.uk. And you can email us on driinfo@ccpe.org.uk. Once again, that's driinfo@ccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £10 a year. Yes, £10 a year. As a member, you will get discounts for our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with the latest dream research news, and we will also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. This low offer of £10 membership will last through to the end of June 2023. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.